me start by saying, let me start by saying I'm a sinner. And I'm standing here right now only by the grace of God and the mercy that He gave me and the hope that He gave me through Christ Jesus. I'm here to share a vision of prosperity for our community. This is a call to action. This is not a performance. This is a message, and this is something that I need my brothers and sisters to help me with. Three years ago, I became involved with a political movement called the Tea Party. The acronym TEA stands for Tax Enough Already. And it's a movement that fights against growing corrupt government and its overtaxation. Because I agree with the fundamental principles of a government that is limited. A leadership of that government that is truly of the people. That means don't let ultra-rich corporations or individuals pay politicians. Because when politicians get paid by these corporations or these individuals, they economically enslave the poor by milking them of their wealth and monopolizing their resources. We must have free markets, not monopolies, in every industry we see today, where corporations ship production jobs overseas so they can take advantage of the oppressed people around the globe. I believe, as in the past tense, that protesting in the streets against corrupt government and debating people who disagree with me was a good way to make a difference. And for the most part, I was wrong. And I don't feel I was wrong about limited government or fiscal responsibility or free markets, but I was wrong because I confused making statements with making a difference. I've made many statements. I've traveled all across the country, and I've made statements in over 150 different cities, from coast to coast, from New York to California, from Texas to North Dakota. But until the last 12 months, I never made this connection, that I could visit 1,000 cities in every state. But if all I do is make statements about facts or what I believe, I'm never going to reach anyone outside the choir or make any lasting changes in people's lives. God allowed me to read something that made this vision real clear to me. And since then, through different trials and struggles in my personal life, He's confirmed His vision to me in many ways. A few months ago, I live a couple blocks over here. A few months ago, I was in my front yard. I got a compound bow, and I was shooting it. And, budgeted, so I went and bought some cheap arrows that don't belong with a compound bow. And they cracked, and one of them went almost through my finger. And so when I went to the MLK clinic over here on Martin Luther King Drive, I seen a newspaper article on the wall. And it caught my eye, and I got up and I read it. And it was the last speech delivered by Martin Luther King before he was assassinated. And it was famously titled, "I've Been to the Mountaintop." He delivered this speech in Memphis, Tennessee. And what Dr. King said made this vision clear to me. It's all right, this is Dr. King speaking, quote, "It's all right to talk about the streets flowing with milk and honey, but God has commanded us to be concerned about the slums down here and these children who can't eat 3 square meals a day. It's all right to talk about the New Jerusalem, but one day God's preacher must talk about the new New York, the new Atlanta, the new Philadelphia, the new Los Angeles, the new Memphis, Tennessee. This is what we have to do," end quote. And I say that we as a congregation, we as a people, the people of Waco, need to start talking about a new Waco, Texas. Proverbs 31, 8 through 9 reads like this: "Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. For the rights of all who are destitute, speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and the needy," end quote. And there's a great need for us right now to respond to this commandment of God. And Dr. King continued his speech by saying, quote, "Now we're poor people individually. We're poor when you compare us with white society in America. We're poor. Never stop and forget that collectively. That means all of us together. Collectively, we are richer than all the nations in the world with the exception of 9. Did you ever think about that? After you leave the United States, Soviet Russia, Great Britain, West Germany, France, and I can name the others, the American Negro collectively is richer than most nations of the world. We have an annual income of more than $30 billion. This is in 1969. This is Dr. King sharing this, which is more than all the exports of the United States and more than the national budget of Canada combined. Did you know that? That's power right there, if we know how to pull it," end quote. Now let's relate that to our community right here in East Waco and communities like ours around the country. According to the Schubert report released by NeighborWorks Waco, if you added up all the income of people living in East Waco, one of the poorest areas in our small city, collectively we make over $68 million every year. That's about $5.7 million a month, $1.4 million a week, over $200,000 a day right here in little old East Waco. I say it's time for us to start talking about a vision for a new East Waco. An East Waco that by God takes back the responsibility of leading our community towards prosperity, spiritually, socially, economically, and every other regard. So where do we start? That's a great question. And Dr. King had a great answer. Dr. King went on in his speech to say, quote, "We don't have to argue with anybody. We don't have to curse and go around acting bad with our words. We don't need any bricks and bottles. We don't need any Molotov cocktails. We just need to go around to these stores and to these massive industries in our country, in our community, as I say, and say, God sent us by here to say to you that you're not treating His children right. And we've come by here to ask you to make the first item on your agenda fair treatment where God's children are concerned. Now, if you're not prepared to do that, we do have an agenda that we must follow. And our agenda calls for withdrawing economic support from you." End quote. Mark Coran is the owner and CEO of Goodwill, and he profits $2.3 million every year. Goodwill receives all of their merchandise by donations in terms of profit that I personally don't feel does enough for the communities they're located in. My wife and I have purchased a commercial property on Dallas Street that we plan to use as a startup for what we're calling Much Love, a business that will use our connections in Hewitt and Woodway and other middle-class areas to provide discount goods, at the same time build capital to elevate our economic situation in East Waco. And this is something that, I'm going to get off track here, but not only, this is Dr. King saying, quote, "But not only that, we've got to strengthen black institutions. I call upon you to take your money out of the banks downtown and deposit your money in Tri-State Bank. We want a bank-in movement in Memphis." He also said, quote, "You have 6 or 7 black insurance companies here in the city of Memphis. Take out your insurance there. We want to have an insurance in," end quote. Brothers and sisters, Frederick Douglass had it right. Let's take our community off of welfare and put our community onto welfare. With Christ as our light, we can more than conquer the destructive cultures that are poisoning our people. The last 2 paragraphs of Dr. King's speech talk about not buying from businesses that were unfair to minorities and their business practices, strengthening black institutions to compete economically with white businesses that worked against the human rights of minorities, and most importantly, and this is our key for today, putting pressure on city leaders where it hurts the most until they do what is right by the people. Again, let's connect this message to our East Waco community. The money we earn as individuals is 2 things. The money that we work for day in and day out is our wealth and it's our economic power. The economic power that Dr. King was talking about. Our challenge today is no longer a system of governments oppressing us because of our skin color. Today we are allowing modern day oppression, modern day slavery by not understanding those that govern us locally, by letting them tell us a lie that governing is too complicated for us to understand. We're not teaching our children how to lead our city. We can break the cycles of poverty that we come from, but only when we learn our freedoms and learn the responsibilities of enlightenment that come with it. So God has convicted me to build on this vision. My wife and I are here tonight to make a commitment before God and before all of you. We're pledging our lives, our fortunes, and our household to love our friends and neighbors and to serve the broken and the lost. We would be honored if you would join us. And I want to finish by stating the obvious. Many of our neighbors, I myself, and some of our children have struggled with or still struggle with alcoholism, drug addictions, financial ignorance, anger, hatred, sexual immorality, felony criminal records, or a number of other vices that's too long to list. And it shows in our behavior in many areas of our community. But the Word of God is the truth. And I know that God loves us right where we are. And He has plans to prosper us. I'm looking for a council of brothers and sisters to focus and pray with about building an inwardly focused economic base beginning in East Waco, an education effort for all of East Waco that builds on the unique gifts and talents of our children and our neighbors. A spiritual enlightenment so great that our God will be feared even by non-believers. This fellowship will be a great force for God and a great blessing for the least of us. God has shown me the vision. I'm asking for help to carry out this vision. I'd like to collect anybody's contact information that will help me pray, help me determine what I can use my resources for. God has taken me and put me in front of thousands of people. And still to this day, I have an avenue that I can take our message. So I'm learning the message that I have is not mine, it's our communities. And I have an avenue to take that message across the country and be a spokesperson, be a light, but I don't want to speak for myself. I want God to speak through me. And I want the messages of our community, of our people to be heard, and the struggles that we face. And I want to educate our babies, because that might be the next mayor of Waco, Texas. That might be the next city council member in Waco, Texas. We have to understand what's going on, man, because, hey, I mean, they doubled my property taxes, and I'm struggling already, and they're not doing anything for our community. We've been struggling for decades over here in East Waco. I've been living here for about 6 years, but everybody I talk to says it's been like this for a long time. And I'm just tired, and I'm broken, and I'm searching. And I'd like to get your contact information. I can give you my card. You can call me. And I want to start getting together once a month, twice a month, I don't know. But like I said, my wife and I have sacrificed a lot. I have a commercial property on Dallas Street. I want to go from there, and I want to do whatever we have to do to find our business owners, to find our speakers, our entertainers, and build on who we are. And be a light, not only here in East Waco, but throughout Waco, throughout the state of Texas. God bless y'all. I love y'all. I'll be back.